welcome friends. In unit 2, up till now we have talked basically about the various elements in communication mix, and we have also understood as to how you can design your communication campaign. In the today's session, we will be talking about attitude, and we'll be talking about the tools available to you to assess the attitude of the customer or of the prospect or of the market. We will then, in the next session, we'll be talking about what are the various problems as far as measurement of attitude is concerned. So let us start off the session today. Basically, as far as attitude is concerned, please understand that you have already probably read about it in organizational behavior, and you would also be reading about it in consumer behavior as well. So attitude is basically a psychological construct, right? And it basically comprises of three components: the cognitive component, the affective component, and the behavioral component, right? So let us understand what do we mean by these three aspects. The cognitive component means something related to cognition, how you think. So this component of the attitude is how you think about a particular object. Affective is what are your emotions about that particular object, whether you like that particular object or whether you don't like that particular object. So this is the affective component, emotional component, and this is the behavioral component, how you act towards that particular object, right? So for example, let's take an example of Parle-G biscuits. So you may have an attitude towards Parle-G biscuits, and that would comprise of three aspects: what you think about Parle-G biscuits, the cognitive component, how you feel about the Parle-G biscuits, that is the affective or the emotional component, and what do you do as far as Parle-G biscuits are concerned. Do you buy them? Do you recommend those biscuits, this particular brand of biscuits to your friends, or do you not like it, or do you spread a good word of mouth about it, or do you spread a bad word of mouth about it? So these are the behavioral aspects of attitude. Is this fine? So basically these three components are there which together make up an attitude. Is this fine? Now please understand, this is known as the A, B and C. A, B and C of the attitude. A stands for affective component, B stands for the behavioral component, C stands for the cognitive component, right? Now you can have an attitude towards Parle-G biscuit, you can have an attitude towards the Prime Minister, you can have an attitude towards a particular political party, you can have an attitude towards a particular teacher, towards a particular course, towards a particular idea. For example, smoking cigarette, and is it good or bad for health? You can have an attitude towards cigarettes in general also, and towards the smoking habit also, right? So it's not as if you can have an attitude only for a particular product. It could be for a particular idea also. It could be for a particular service as well. For example, you can have an attitude towards the Airtel telecommunication services or Airtel prepaid mobile services. So you can have an attitude towards a particular object, an individual, towards a particular service, towards a particular place, towards a particular idea as well, right? And these things, when you are talking about attitude towards Parle-G would be known as attitude object. So you will have an attitude towards attitude object. If you are talking about Airtel prepaid mobile services, Airtel prepaid mobile services would be called attitude object, and you will have an attitude towards the attitude object. So I have said that you have an attitude towards attitude object, and an attitude object could be a product, it could be a service, it could be a place, it could be an event, it could be an idea, it could be a custom also, a social practice also. So it could be anything, right? Now one more thing I would like to talk about here is attitude generally predicts behavior. For example, if you have a favorable attitude towards smoking, suppose you have a favorable attitude towards smoking, it is likely that you would like people who smoke. It is likely that your friends will be from among people who smoke, and you may yourself start smoking also because you have a favorable attitude. This is fine. So generally, attitude can help us predict behavior. So for example, if you have an favorable attitude towards a particular political party, then you are more likely to vote for that particular political party during the elections. So generally, in many instances, the attitude predicts behavior. However, there are some exceptions also. It may so happen that because of the social pressure, you may not behave in a manner which is congruent to your attitude. So your attitude is that you should not take dowry. Your attitude is unfavorable towards this practice of dowry, dahej. However, you are still taking dowry while you are getting married, or you are not opposing this particular practice in your society. The reason is there is a lot of social pressure on you from your relatives and from your family members, from your friends, and that is why your attitude is different from what your behavior is. Your behavior and attitude are not in the same direction. The reason is social pressure. However, if there is no social pressure, you are likely to behave exactly as per your attitude. Fine. So let me sum it up. Generally, attitude predicts behavior, but whenever there is some social pressure on you, it may so happen that your behavior may not correspond to your attitude. Right? Now let us talk about, before talking about measurement of attitude and what all tools we have for that, let us talk about how attitudes are formed and how do they change. Naturally, you have an attitude because it must have got formed at some point of time. So how attitude formation takes place? Number one is reward and punishment. So for example, if you are rewarded for a particular thing, you would start cultivating a favorable attitude towards it. And if a particular thing leads to punishment, you would start cultivating an unfavorable attitude towards it. So for example, when in your childhood you started brushing your teeth twice daily, once in the morning and once before going to bed, your parents rewarded you in some fashion. They probably praised you, so this was a reward for you, and then slowly, because of this reward, you would start cultivating a favorable attitude towards this habit of brushing your teeth twice in a day, or brushing your teeth before going to bed during the night. Is this okay? On the other hand, if something brings punishment, you will start cultivating an unfavorable attitude towards that particular thing. Is this okay? Now the same thing happens when you go to the market and you buy a particular product. Say you buy a particular product and it works as per your expectation. In fact, it exceeds your expectation. So in that sense, it becomes a reward. And you start having a favorable attitude towards that particular product. On the other hand, if you buy a product and that product does not meet your expectations because of its poor quality or poor reliability, this is some kind of a punishment for you, and because of which you will start cultivating an unfavorable attitude towards that particular product. And ultimately what will happen? I said right in the beginning that attitude would predict behavior in most of the instances. So what will happen if you have an unfavorable attitude towards a particular product? You would probably not be buying that particular product in future. So a negative attitude and unfavorable attitude would lead to switching to some other brand or some other product and not buying the same product, right? So you went to the market, let's say you bought a particular pair of jeans, but you did not find it a very good quality pair of jeans. So what will you do is start having a negative attitude towards that particular brand, and then you would never buy that particular brand again. So this happens. Many of you, some of you in fact, they came to BBA to pursue their BBA with different set of expectations. They thought that it is just like BSc kind of a course where you simply do not have to work very, very hard. So when, however, you were made to work hard, some of you felt that it was some kind of a punishment for you, and they have started cultivating an unfavorable attitude towards this course, right? And it is likely that they would not recommend their younger brothers or sisters to pursue this course. Is that making sense? Right. So this happens. And now do you understand why it is very, very important for a marketer to assess the customer's attitude, to assess the attitude of the general public, or to assess the attitude of the prospective customers towards his own products, his own brands? Because many a times attitude will determine the behavior. If a particular market, most of the people have a favorable attitude towards my product, what will happen? They are very much likely to buy my product also. So that is why it's very, very important for the marketers also to keep assessing the attitude of the customers or of the target audience towards their own brands, right? Now, attitude can also form and change because of your experiences. Let me give an example. You, for example, had a very bad let's say you have an unfavorable attitude towards small dhabas. There are small street side dhabas, but you are from a very rich family, so you have only gone to and you have only partied in some big restaurants like Meghna or Satkar, and you do not have a very favorable attitude towards the roadside dhabas, right? But then your friends someday forcibly take you to a roadside dhaba and you have some snacks there, and you find those snacks very, very tasty. What will happen? Don't you think this will lead to a change in your attitude? Now you would slowly start feeling more positively about roadside dhabas, and your initially negative, unfavorable attitude towards these roadside dhabas would slightly change to positive attitude, a favorable attitude, or at least the intensity of the negative emotion towards roadside dhabas would decrease because of this experience of yours. And if you start having these experiences on a regular basis over a period of time, what will happen? You will start having a favorable attitudes towards these roadside dhabas. Is this making sense? So experiences also lead to formation and changes in attitude. Many a times social norms and practices also decide what your attitude would be towards a particular product or towards a particular service. Have you ever seen those societies? Let's talk about those families where nobody drinks, nobody is in the habit of consuming liquor. Even the young children there, they have a very unfavorable attitudes towards liquor. Why? Because the norm has been like that in their family. Nobody drinks liquor, so naturally they start having a negative, unfavorable attitude towards liquor products. Or for example, families where people do not consume non-vegetarian food. So there even the young members of the family, they start having a very unfavorable attitude towards non-vegetarian food, and they also start consuming vegetarian food. So many a times the norms, the rules prevalent in your family, the rules prevalent in your society, they lead to formation of attitude and changes in attitude also. For example, in our societies, generally people marry only once. So there is this practice wherein people marry only once. Rarely in some cases it happens that they divorce one individual and then they marry somebody else. However, this is very, very common in American societies. Whereas here in our society, marriage is considered to be some kind of a lifelong pact. Now this is the practice here, and naturally people who marry twice, thrice, people in the society would start having negative, unfavorable attitude towards these people who marry twice or thrice. But that would not be the case in Western society, American society. Why? Because of the social norms and practices here. Is this making sense? Right. For example, I'm giving you another example. If you stay away from your parents, let's say you are also there in Pithoragarh and you start earning and you move out of your parents' house and you stay in a different location, in a different house, it would not be considered a good thing by the other members of the society. Your friends or your family members might ridicule you for this. Why? because this is not an acceptable practice here. So not staying with your parents is not considered an acceptable practice here, and that is why you would look down upon those people who are staying away from their parents despite being in the same city. On the other hand, since this is an accepted practice in American society, as a individual, if you move out of your parents' house at the age of 21, 22, there would be no harsh reaction from the society, because the attitude there is that this is perfectly fine for individual to start living his life independently once he or she attains an age of 21, 22. This is fine. So this is how attitudes form and attitudes change also. Many a times role models also lead to changes in attitude. For example, if you like Salman Khan and Salman Khan does a particular thing, you would start having favorable attitude towards that particular thing, and you might yourself start imitating Salman Khan and doing that particular thing. So many a times role modeling also helps. You start, if you like a particular teacher, then that particular teacher would be a role model for you, and you'd start doing what that particular teacher does. You'd start imitating him, and you'd start having positive, favorable attitude towards whatever things this particular teacher does. So this is also how attitude forms and attitude changes, right? Now let us talk about how attitudes are measured. Now this is the main topic as far as today's session is concerned, measurement of attitude, and I have told you why it is very important for a marketer to be able to assess the customer's attitude towards his brands, towards his products, because ultimately a favorable attitude is very likely to result into increase in sales, repeat purchases by the customer, and spreading of good word of mouth by the customer. So we have got two different types of measurements. One are known as the rating scales, and then we have got the ranking scales. The difference is, in ranking scale, we would ask our respondent to rank the various brands or the various products. We'll have a detailed look at the ranking scales later in this particular session. And in rating scales, we make use of ratings. So let us understand both the two types of scales which are used for measurement of attitude, right? So let us talk about the rating scales first, and we have got the atomized rating scale. Herein I'll be discussing 4 examples, and if you recall our discussion in research methodology in BBA 4th semester, you would understand that this is just a repetition of whatever we have discussed there. There also I talked about measurement scales, and we are going to discuss the same thing again. You can still go back to those lectures wherein I have discussed these things in more detail, in case you find that I am moving a little too fast in this particular session, right? So itemized rating scale, and I have taken up these examples. So the question here which you would pose to your respondent is, in this fashion you would be posing the question, and then this is how you would be giving him the options. What is your opinion of the healing ability of Dettol antiseptic liquid? Please mark your response below. Now this is called an itemized rating scale. Here we have got these 5 options, that 5 alternatives that we'll provide to our respondent. Respondent will be marking his answer. He has to choose one of these 5 responses. So this way I would be able to, as a marketer, understand that what is the attitude of my customers or of my target market towards my product. Here in this case it is Dettol antiseptic liquid. So toward Dettol antiseptic liquid's healing ability, curing ability, right? So this is how I can understand what is the attitude of my customer, what is the attitude of my prospective customer, and what is the attitude of my target audience towards my brand. Now what are the attributes of this itemized rating scale? Please understand, limited number of order response categories, so there is only going to be a limited number. Here we have got 5, and they are in an order. Order means there is a particular movement from excellent to poor. So excellent, then we have got very good, then we have got good, average, poor. It's not in a jumbled fashion. For example, excellent succeeded by poor, and then again average, and then very good and good. Not like that. So it is gradually moving from the highest possible rating to the lowest possible rating, to excellent, highly positive rating, to gradually to slightly low positive rating like very good or good, and then to a negative rating like poor. Now this is what we mean by ordered response categories. And what are the response categories? These are the response categories, the options that we are providing to our respondent, right? Now please understand that one of the drawback is that the respondent has to pick up one of these as his choice. So he has to pick up only one of these 5 options. He cannot say that, okay, my response is somewhere between very good and good. Now this is not available to him. This luxury is not available. So either he has to mark very good or he has to mark good. He cannot say, no, I am somewhere between very good and good, though he might have that kind of an attitude also. So in that sense, this is a drawback of itemized rating scale. However, if you look at the graphic rating scale, you would find that this particular drawback does not exist here. It's the same question I am posing to my respondent here. Opinion of the healing ability of Dettol antiseptic liquid. However, here see, and please understand, we are moving from excellent to poor. That is perfectly fine. But now there is no compulsion for the respondent to mark at a particular position. He can mark somewhere here. He can mark somewhere here also. He can mark somewhere here also. He can mark somewhere here also. He can mark here as well. He can mark here as well. Right? So now supposing this corresponds to very good and this corresponds to good, supposing, then he can mark his response somewhere in between also, and I'm perfectly fine with that. So that is the strength of graphic rating scale. That is how graphic rating scale scores over the itemized rating scale. There are endless options. There are unlimited options for the respondent to mark his response, and he can give whatever response he feels like, anywhere between excellent and poor. Another advantage of graphic rating scale is that it is easier to respond to. Why? Because as a respondent you simply think, where would you lie between excellent and poor? Where would your response should be? Where your response should be between excellent and poor. So you don't have to think hard about the 5 response categories. You can mark your response anywhere. Again, this also speeds up the interview because it does not require the respondent to read out 5 different response categories and understand them. He can mark his response anywhere. And as I said, infinite number of responses are possible, and this is where it scores over the itemized rating scale. However, it is difficult to analyze. Can you compare it with itemized rating scale? In itemized rating scale, either he marks excellent or very good or poor or average. Here, he can mark somewhere between here, between excellent, poor, somewhere here he can also mark, he can mark here also. So, you will require some more time to actually understand what is he trying to convey, right? Is he trying to say it is almost very good? For example, if very good is somewhere here, then this kind of a response is almost like very good, or it is just below very good, which would be a response here, right? So this assessment is going to be difficult. So analysis is difficult as far as graphic rating scales are concerned. Now let us talk about the semantic differential scale. I hope you understand what semantics mean. It has to do with language, and here again the same question has been posed. However, please understand, we have basically used 2 words which are basically exact opposite. So dichotomous pair of words is used. Dichotomous basically here is opposite pair of words. So excellent and the exact opposite is 7, right? And these are these extremes. So excellent is 1 and 7 is poor. So the respondent can mark his response anywhere between. Why it is called semantic differential? Because see, there's a difference in terms of meaning. So that is why in terms of meaning, in terms of the language, there is a difference between excellent and poor, and that is why it is known as semantic differential scale, right? Many times it is used also, apart from being used for attitude assessment, it is also used for assessing image of a particular brand or of a company, right? Now let's talk about the Likert scale. Now what do we mean by Likert scale? Likert scale, please understand, would have these kind of categories. Here, however, the question is posed in a slightly different manner. Here the question is not posed as an interrogative sentence. It is posed as an affirmative sentence. Dettol antiseptic liquid heals well. I hope you remember what happened in the last three skills. We were posing a question, but here it's not being posed like this. We are simply giving a statement, Dettol antiseptic liquid heals well, and the respondent has to mark his level of agreement with this particular statement. So if he feels that yes, Dettol antiseptic liquid heals well, and he has confidence in this particular statement, then he would probably mark strongly agree. But however, if he feels that is not the case, he might go for strongly disagree or disagree, right? So this is how Likert scale is different from the other scales that we have. We have these kind of response categories: strongly agree, agree. Again, they are in an ordered fashion, from strongly agree to undecided to disagree to strongly disagree. So the respondent has to specify his level of agreement or disagreement with a particular statement, right? Now this one is known as a unipolar. Why is it known as a unipolar? Just let me get back to what we have discussed here. Now this was basically a bipolar scale. I hope you understand why this is basically a bipolar scale, because we have got two poles. One is excellent, the other one is poor. On the other hand, here Likert scale, we have got just one adjective. We are saying Dettol antiseptic liquid heals well. That is all. So just one adjective is being used, and that is why Likert scale is a unipolar scale. Just one pole, just one particular adjective is being used, right? So with this, we conclude today's session. We have discussed four scales that you can make use of to assess the attitude of your target audience, assess the attitude of your customers or your prospective customers, your prospects, towards your brand, towards your product or towards your service. In the next session that we will have tomorrow, we'll be talking about the problems in assessment or measurement of attitude. Thank you.